Hi, everybody. Welcome to this channel. My name is Adrian Parker. I'm a certified strength and conditioning coach through the NSCA. I have a biomechanics specialization through Nesta. I have a bachelor's degree in exercise science, and I'm currently pursuing my master's in sports performance. Today, I thought I'd go over the movement tree. This is just going to be like a diagram to help you create more comprehensive and full-bodied exercise programs for either yourself or your clients. So welcome in. I hope that this can help you out. Um, I learned this in my last year of undergrad with Exos during my internship. When I was there, I was able to work with some athletes and military populations, and they kind of use this as like an intro to programming crash course slash one-on-one. Um, and this just really helped me out when I was a young coach and trying to learn how to program, not just for exercise, but to create adaptation and lasting results. So without any further ado, I want to just kind of step in, dip a toe in per se, and I want to bring up a phrase that I'll probably be returning to a couple times throughout this quick presentation. Uh, Exos likes to say, if you train muscles, you're bound to forget movements. But if you train movements, you'll never forget muscles. So that's basically just saying that as long as you can create a program in which there's a lot of different kinds of movements across different planes, that your muscles will be completely every muscle that's important and imperative to you being functional and fit to whatever matters to you most will be exercised versus if I'm sitting in a gym and just saying, I want to train my chest today, I may forget some movements that may lead me to having some imbalances or not as much results as I would want out of what I'm trying to do, right? So without any further ado, we're going to start off with upper body. So with upper body, pretty fairly simple. I'm going to box this off. We have our push movements and our pull movements, right? So pushes usually innervate anterior chain, you know, chest, shoulders, etc. Pulls, anterior, posterior chain, our lats, trapezius, etc. Right? So for both of these, I'm going to abbreviate, but just know when I say BIL, I mean bilateral. And when I say UNI, I'm saying unilateral. These are just fancy ways of saying both arms at the same time, bilateral, bicycle, you get the gist, versus unilateral, one arm at a time. So with bilateral, these are usually movements done with like barbells or in a closed chain way of looking at things, push-ups, pull-ups, etc. Uh, a common question that I get asked when you're looking at doing movements with dumbbells, both at the same time, like a dumbbell chest press or bench press, because both arms are responsible for their own weight, and there's not a way for one arm to compensate for the other, that's going to be considered unilateral. Just a clarifying point. Now, there's still super important things that are can only be done with barbells or vice versa. There's a little bit more of a stability component when you do bilateral movements with or unilateral movements with dumbbells, but you can only do certain things with barbells. I mean, it's as simply as possible. The strength output that you can create is always going to be a little bit more when you can use both arms on the same load. But both are equally important for different reasons. If you have somebody or yourself, you're just trying to get back into the gym, or you don't have a lot of training age, you might want to stick with unilateral dumbbell movements. just because, the baseline foundational level of programming is just trying to attack imbalances when you're getting back into the swing of things. But, maybe you can progress to the bilateral movements. But just make sure that whatever you're doing, the more demanding movement is placed kind of higher up in the chain, just so you're not fatigued when you take it on. That's another programming 101 course that I can do a different day. But from there, we have things that can be done. Our upper body pushes in a horizontal or a vertical plane of movement. So with horizontal movements, these are basically, our bench presses, like, even though, yes, it's technically moving up and down, but relative to our body, we're pushing it away versus pushing above us. So just easy way to kind of remember things. And then same thing with our pulls. We can do rows, we can do pull-ups, we can do pull downs, you can do T-bar rows, etc. But either way, relative to your body, that's the most important thing to remember. Relative to your body, you can do things horizontally or vertically. All right. So that's just the very brief, quick, easy upper body side of the movement tree. All right. Now you can take a look at the lower body. Lower body is a little bit different just in terms of what movements are classified as what. So just like the upper body, we have pushes and pulls. Now, it's not going to be nice and pretty and easy like this one, just as a heads up. Hopefully you can see this. I promise that I will add a little picture at the end just so you can see and not have to struggle with my tiny handwriting. But with the pushes, we have bilateral and unilateral. That's it. For pushes, because you're looking at things biomechanically, when you're trying to do a push, the only way you can kind of do things, I guess, horizontally is if you had a leg press where, you're sitting here and then the platform that you're pushing against is right in front of you. But still, relative to your body, you're still just pushing that away. So it doesn't really matter because the orientation of your body is going to change along with whatever machine you're using. So no matter what, you're doing a horizontal, or I mean, you're doing a vertical movement, but now it's just a question of if you're doing both legs at the same time, or you're doing a lunge, a split squat, a step up, anything like that. Pulls are a little bit different. So for this one, you have, say you're doing your leg curl machine, right? That's a pull, but if you're looking biomechanically again, you have hinges, which are anything where the hips are moving without or throughout space, um, or the axis of rotation is being your hips. That is like your RDLs, your glute bridges, anything like that. So we have hip dominant and knee dominant. So hip dominant movements, your RDLs, your glute bridges. You could even do a split squat and add a little bit of torso, like lean your torso forward and it'll activate more glute. Um, Only thing that kind of doesn't fit in here is a deadlift, which can be manipulated to be either a push or a pull. It kind of just depends on what your torso is doing. You could also do like trap bar deadlifts, which could be high handle, which mimics more of a pull, and low handle, which mimics more of a squat pattern. It's tricky. Another topic, another day. But that is your general, really quick and easy movement pattern tree, right? Then from here, you can do unilateral, bilateral, unilateral, bilateral. All right. Bilateral. So here's your quick, easy movement tree. From here, again, you have different things can be manipulated to create different movements and different demands on your system. What do I mean by that? Right? When you're doing something unilaterally, right? The you usually we think about our movements in the gym about the sagittal plane. So front to back. That, it's exercise. But returning back to what I said in the beginning, right? You train muscles, you'll forget movements. Training movements, you won't forget muscles, right? So we're trying to create movement about all three planes, right? So keeping in mind, sagittal plane, front to back, frontal plane divides us in half this way, right? So maybe add your Cossack Cossack squats or a lateral lunge or a lateral step up just to create that movement about the frontal plane. And then we're missing one, right? One movement one movement plane being the transverse plane. Transverse plane separates our body from top to bottom, which usually when we're referring to a transverse movement, it's about this axis, right? So if we're doing a single arm bench press, right? Usually we do one of these, right? We're trying to resist the weight pulling us into rotation when we come down. So this oblique has to fire in order to keep us centered, right? So we have rotation and anti-rotation. So I know a lot of people have seen like Pallof presses where we have a band or a cable out to the side and then we're pushing and the band or cable wants to pull us into rotation this way. But because our oblique is firing, it keeps us straight, right? But think even deeper, right? Rotation doesn't just have to be this way. It could also be this way about the frontal plane, right? So say we're doing a single arm shoulder press, right? We're either up or on a knee, doesn't matter. But as we press and come down, whatever side is holding that weight or the load wants to flex, wants to pull, the weight wants to pull us into lateral flexion, right? So instead of letting the weight pull us into this lateral flexion, the erector muscles have to fire to keep us upright, right? So not only are we thinking of rotation about the transverse plane, but also the uh, frontal plane. And then when we want to do rotations, whether that be kinetic linking, like a med ball toss, or a rotational wood chopper, or a rotational kettlebell swing, doesn't matter. We want to be, I'm even going to erase this. Look at this. Because rotation just doesn't exist in one plane. It exists in multiple. We're going to do rotation and anti-rotation. So that's another separate branch because it can kind of apply more or less to any of these movements, right? You may not think about like a push movement being rotational or anti-rotational because most of the movements you think about are closed chain, which brings me to my next branch is closed chain and open chain. So closed chain meaning think of your body as the chain, right? So when we look at our body, the chain runs through our feet. Closed chain means if I'm doing a barbell back squat, right? Because my feet are on the ground and my body is moving throughout space, or my body is not moving throughout space, right? The floor closes my chain, meaning the muscle group that's being worked is being stationary, quote unquote, right? That's going to be classified as a closed chain. Now, keeping with the quad dominant exercises, if I'm doing a leg extension, right? I'm up here, my leg is moving throughout space, meaning there's nothing closing my chain. That's going to be an open chain, right? So, especially with the pushes, because there's only like a couple movements that you can really do to innervate, and a lot of them are squat centric. And if you have like a bad knee, you can still create the like a full bodied or diverse program by just incorporating an open chain movement, meaning your leg extensions, and a closed chain movement, like a heel elevated goblet squat, for example. Um, Now, I had that backwards just because I would do the squat first and then do the leg extension later, just because the squat is more demanding. You'll get more out of it, but it's still good to mix it up. I wouldn't just do close chain, close chain, close chain for the lower body. Same thing with upper body. I wouldn't just do bench press and rows. I would probably mix it up and do some kind of pull up or some kind of push up, right? But that's neither here nor there. The last thing that I want to kind of add to this movement chain, I'll add it right here, uh, is power. So for power, I like to look at it multiple ways. You have propulsive power and stability. Now, it's not like two sides of the coin. There are multiple aspects. Now, if you're not doing any like power related movements, I would definitely encourage you to look into it, maybe add it to your program, especially once you reach past the age of 25. That's the first thing to go. And for me, I'm over 25. I'm thinking about that all the time. So think about a canoe, right? And say you have a big cannon inside that canoe, and you're trying to fire the cannon to see how far the cannonball will go. What do you think will happen to that canoe? If it doesn't blow up, it'll more than likely flip over, right? Because that cannonball is only made to be shot out of a very sturdy ship or the ground, like on land. So your body is only going to be as powerful as the amount of force that it can control. What do I mean by that, right? Say you're doing all those kinetic linking kind of movements that I was talking about earlier, the med ball tosses, um, box jumps, broad jumps, high level depth jump plyos, anything like that, right? That's fantastic for you. But are you able to control that force if it's exerted upon you, or are you only able to produce it? So just a little extra thing to think about is like if I'm doing all of those things that I just mentioned, make sure that you're doing something that mimics force being exerted on you and you have to control it, right? Because our bodies are machines, but we can't be all gas and no brakes, if that makes sense. So if you're doing, I can get into it another time, but if you're doing partner assisted perpendicular toss, right? Have your partner to toss it back to you so you can control that med ball back. And just make sure that you're doing some kind of stability work on the side of the propulsives, just so that you have the duality of everything. So now you have propulsive stability, rotation, anti-rotation, closed and open chain. You see everything, whoops, everything has an equal and opposite, right? Like Newton. But this is kind of the general gist. Once again, going back to what I mentioned in the beginning, you train movements, you're never going to forget muscles. So making sure that you have each and every axis of rotation or movement plane, you have every single thing. I think I haven't counted all of these, but I think that in total it's about 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 11, 12, 13, 14. Like 14 total movements here, not including the extra six, but that's 20. So if you're looking at like a 3 day a week program, that's not impossible to achieve, right? Especially with like your propulsive stability, only has to really be a couple. And then these usually fit into these. So I'm not even going to count those. 18. So 6 exercises, 3 movements, or 3 days a week is very achievable. But say you're doing like a 2 day a week program. If you're not doing, say you miss out on your bilateral horizontal movement, the first workout program that you have, right? Like a little mesocycle, 6 to 8 weeks type of thing. The next time you come around and you're like, all right, what am I doing for the next 6 to 8 weeks? You better make sure that you have that. And if you're doing the vertical, unilateral stuff, then you flip it. So just making sure that it doesn't have to be included in every single workout program. Of course, it would be ideal if you could, but if you don't have the time, you don't have the equipment necessary, that's perfectly fine. But just make sure that you flip it. That the next time that you are making your program, that you include it. All right. That's all I'm saying. This has been the Movement Tree. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that this can help you out, whether it's with your clients or just yourself in trying to make new and comprehensive workouts. Please let me know if there's anything that I can help clarify or just talk about. I'm always on my computer for work, so if there's anything that I can expand on or help you out with, please let me know, and I'd be happy to help. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.